Most people think healing feels like freedom, like one morning you wake up and the weight is gone, the sadness erased, the story behind you. But Carl Jung warned us, real healing almost never feels that way. It doesn't announce itself with a trumpet. It doesn't shout, "You've made it." Instead, it slips in quietly. In fact, you often miss it completely because it hides inside ordinary moments, and so you keep telling yourself you're broken when the truth is, you may already be far more healed than you realize. Here's the danger. When you can't see your own progress, you keep living as if you're still wounded. You keep revisiting the past. You keep replaying the same stories in your head, blind to the fact that something has already shifted inside you. Jung believed this was one of the great tragedies of the human mind. We mistake silence for absence. Just because healing doesn't roar, we assume it hasn't arrived. But what if I told you that there are 6 unmistakable signs, subtle, yes, but undeniable, that show you are no longer where you used to be? Think about this. A friend once told me that after a painful breakup, she was convinced she was still stuck. She still missed him. She still replayed conversations. She still felt the ache. And then one day, she walked past their favorite cafe. She braced herself for the usual sting, but instead, nothing came. Just silence. Just the neutral hum of life continuing. She didn't celebrate. She didn't even notice at first. It was only hours later that she realized something has changed. That's what healing looks like. Not a grand finale, but a quiet shift. Jung wrote that the psyche doesn't return to its old form after a wound. It reorganizes itself. It becomes something new, something larger, more complex, more resilient. He compared it to a tree that survives a storm. The branches may break, the bark may scar, but the roots go deeper. The tree is not back to normal. It is different, stronger, and that difference is the mark of healing. But because this process unfolds invisibly, we underestimate it. We measure healing only by what still hurts, not by what no longer controls us. So in the next minutes, I'll share 6 signs that your healing is already alive inside you. They may surprise you. They may not look like healing at all. But when you recognize them, you'll realize something profound. You are not stuck in the same place. You are already walking forward. You are already carrying your pain differently. And that recognition may be the moment you finally stop calling yourself broken and start calling yourself whole. One of the first hidden signs of healing is this. You stop chasing closure like it's the missing piece that will finally set you free. At the beginning of a wound, closure feels like oxygen. You want the other person to explain why they left. You want life itself to explain why it turned out this way. You want answers, apologies, explanations, something to make the chaos make sense. But Jung reminded us, the psyche rarely receives neat endings. Life almost never gives us a final chapter tied with a bow. And yet, healing still happens. I knew a man who lost his closest friend after a bitter argument. For months, he replayed the fight in his mind, imagining different outcomes. He wrote letters he never sent. He rehearsed what he would say if they met again. And then one morning, he noticed something strange. The urge to write another letter just wasn't there. He still remembered the fight, but the need to fix it had quietly dissolved. The friendship never returned. The apology never came. And yet, he was freer than before, because his peace no longer depended on an answer he might never receive. That shift, from demanding resolution to accepting life's unfinished edges, is one of the clearest markers of healing. Ask yourself this: do you still rehearse the same conversation in your head, hoping one day it will close the wound? Or have you noticed that you can think of the person, the event, the loss, without needing a final scene? If you can remember without demanding, if you can acknowledge the past without chasing explanations, you've healed more than you think. Jung would say that this is the psyche integrating the wound. You haven't erased the memory. You haven't forced yourself to get over it. Instead, the wound has lost its grip on you, and that's what makes closure unnecessary, not because the story changed, but because you changed. Peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from no longer needing them. Another sign of hidden healing is this: you no longer demand that everyone understand you. In the early stages of pain, we explain ourselves endlessly. We repeat our story again and again, hoping someone will finally get it, will finally validate the storm we've lived through. And when they don't, it feels like another wound. But healing shifts that pattern. Slowly, you discover that your peace doesn't depend on being fully understood. There was a woman who went through a painful divorce. At first, she felt compelled to justify every choice she made, why she stayed so long, why she left when she did, why she couldn't make it work. Friends would nod, but she could see in their eyes that some of them didn't truly grasp it, and every time it cut her open again. She thought, if they can't understand, maybe I was wrong. But over time, something changed. When a distant relative asked, "What really happened?" she simply smiled and said, "It was complicated." Then she changed the subject. For the first time, she didn't feel the burning need to be believed. Her life no longer required validation. Ask yourself, do you still feel the urge to explain your story to everyone who asks, or even to people who don't? Or can you now let someone misunderstand you without rushing to defend yourself? If you can walk away from a conversation without replaying it in your head, if you can allow others to hold their version without it shaking your core, then healing has already taken root. Jung believed that one mark of psychological maturity is the ability to hold contradictions. You know your truth, and you accept that not everyone will see it. And here's the quiet strength in that. By no longer chasing external validation, you reclaim the energy that once kept you trapped in other people's perceptions. That energy is now yours to use for growth, creation, and peace. Healing isn't when everyone finally understands you. Healing is when you no longer need them to. Another hidden sign of healing is this: the past no longer glows with the golden light of illusion. In pain, we often polish our memories. We replay the moments before the break, before the betrayal, before the loss. We edit them until they look perfect, because compared to the chaos of the present, the past feels safe, ideal, almost holy. But real healing begins when you stop clinging to those illusions, when the past becomes what it truly is, not paradise lost, but a teacher that shaped you. Think of Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, cut off from his family, his community, his freedom. It would have been so easy for him to idealize the life he had before, his youth, his activism, the days when he was free. But Mandela once said that prison taught him something paradoxical, that longing for the past only deepened his suffering. He could either remain a prisoner of memory or allow the present to transform him. By the time he walked out of prison, he wasn't dreaming of returning to the way things used to be. He had accepted that life could never be the same. Instead, he focused on creating something entirely new: reconciliation instead of revenge, a future instead of a repeat of the past. That refusal to romanticize yesterday was not weakness, it was strength, and it was one of the reasons he became not only free, but transformative. So let me ask you this: when you look back at a relationship, a season of your life, a lost opportunity, do you still imagine it as flawless, untouchable, the only time you were truly happy? Or have you begun to see it with clearer eyes, both the beauty and the flaws, both the joy and the pain? If you can remember without rewriting the past into a fairy tale, if you can hold gratitude without longing to return, you've already healed more than you realize. Jung would say that this shift reveals integration. You no longer use the past as a fantasy to escape the present. Instead, you accept its complexity, and that acceptance frees you. Because when you stop glorifying yesterday, you finally make space for today. Healing is when the past becomes a chapter, not a prison. One of the most revealing signs of healing is this: you can be alone and not feel lonely. At first, solitude feels like an enemy. It presses on your chest, whispering that something is missing, that you're not enough on your own. You fight against it with constant distraction, endless scrolling, background noise, unnecessary plans. But when healing begins to settle, solitude changes shape. The quiet that once frightened you starts to feel like a place of rest. There was a young man who moved to a new city for work. In the beginning, the evenings were the hardest. After long days in a crowded office, he dreaded walking back to an empty apartment. He kept the TV running just for the sound, ordered food he didn't enjoy, anything to avoid the stillness. Months later, something shifted. One Friday night, he cooked a simple dinner for himself, put on music he loved, and ate at his small kitchen table. For the first time, he wasn't waiting for the phone to buzz or for someone to knock on the door. He realized this moment is enough. That ordinary evening, just him, a meal, and music, wasn't loneliness anymore. It was solitude. And it felt good. So let me ask you, do you still feel restless when you're by yourself? Or have you noticed moments where being alone felt calm, even nourishing? If you've had that shift, where solitude stopped being heavy and started being peaceful, share it in the comments. Your story might remind someone else that being alone doesn't always mean being lonely. Jung wrote that individuation, the journey of becoming whole, requires facing yourself without distraction. If you can be at home in your own company, you're already carrying a new kind of strength. Because when solitude no longer threatens you, you stop running. You begin to rest in who you are. Healing is when an empty room no longer feels empty, because you're in it. Another unmistakable sign of healing is this: your pain no longer stops at breaking you. It becomes raw material for something else. At the beginning of suffering, the wound feels meaningless. It steals your energy, your clarity, your hope. But in time, healing reshapes that energy. The very experiences that once threatened to destroy you start producing insight, creativity, and resilience. This is not about pretending pain is beautiful. It isn't. It's about recognizing that healing can turn what once wounded you into a source of depth you never asked for, but now carry. Think of Johnny Cash, the legendary musician. His life was marked by struggle, addiction, loss, public failure. For years, his pain nearly consumed him, and yet he turned that pain into music that still resonates today. Songs like Hurt or Folsom Prison Blues are not polished celebrations. They are confessions carved from suffering. But instead of destroying him, those songs gave his pain a voice. They transformed private wounds into art that touched millions. Cash once said, "You build on failure. You use it as a stepping stone." His life showed that pain, when integrated, becomes not just a scar, but a bridge for others. Have you ever noticed that what once broke you has started to create something new? Maybe grief pushed you to write words you didn't know were inside you. Maybe betrayal taught you compassion you never had before. Maybe loss carved out space in you that now holds strength. Jung called this archetype the wounded healer. The idea that the deepest pain, once integrated, can give rise to the deepest wisdom. You don't erase the wound. You don't pretend it never hurt. But you discover that it can serve a new purpose. Instead of being the end of you, it becomes the soil where a different version of you begins to grow. Healing is when the wound no longer silences you, but teaches you to sing. The final hidden sign of healing is this: life begins to align in ways that feel almost too precise to be random. You don't force it, you don't chase it, and yet doors open at the exact moment you need them. The right words appear, the right people arrive, the right opportunities show up, as if life itself is quietly conspiring to guide you. Jung called this synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the invisible threads connecting us to the world around us. And one of the clearest signs of inner healing is when you start noticing those threads more often. Think about this. You're struggling with a decision, unsure if you should take a risk. You step into a bookstore, and the very first book you see has the exact sentence you needed to hear. Or you wake up thinking of someone you haven't spoken to in years, and that afternoon, their message appears in your inbox. Or you're feeling lost, wondering if you're on the right path, and a stranger says something in passing that lands like an answer written just for you. These aren't accidents. They're moments where your inner shift meets the outer world, and together they line up in ways that remind you you are not walking blind. So let me ask you, have you noticed patterns lately? Small alignments that made you pause and think, that can't just be coincidence? If you have, share one in the comments. For Jung, synchronicity wasn't magic. It was the psyche recognizing its own integration. When your inner world begins to harmonize, you see that reflected in the outer world. The patterns were always there. Healing allows you to notice them. And when you notice them, you start to trust. You stop fighting against life as if it's your enemy, and you begin walking with it as if it's your companion. Healing is when life stops feeling random and starts feeling like a conversation. We've walked through 6 quiet, powerful signs of healing, and maybe, as you listened, you recognized yourself in some of them. Maybe in one, maybe in all. That recognition is not small. It means you are already further along than you've been telling yourself. It means the story of being stuck, the story of being broken, no longer fits who you are becoming. Think about it. You no longer chase closure. You accept that some endings will remain open. You no longer beg to be understood. You allow yourself to hold your truth even when others can't see it. You no longer romanticize the past. You carry it as a teacher, not a prison. You no longer fear solitude. You discover that silence can nourish you. You no longer let pain stop at breaking you. You turn it into wisdom, art, or strength. You no longer see life as chaos. You notice the patterns that quietly guide you. These aren't small shifts, they are proof. Proof that healing is alive inside you, shaping you, leading you into a life that is larger, stronger, and freer than the one you left behind. Jung once wrote that healing doesn't erase our wounds, it weaves them into the fabric of our wholeness. And maybe that's the most important reminder. You are not healed when nothing hurts. You are healed when what hurt you no longer defines you. So if you feel ordinary moments of peace where there used to be chaos, notice them, honor them. They are not accidents. They are the dawn breaking through. If even one of these signs resonated with you, hold on to it. Save this message so you can return to it on the days when you forget how far you've come. And share your story in the comments. Which sign did you recognize most in yourself? Your words may give courage to someone else who still doubts their own healing, because none of us are meant to walk this path alone. Healing is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new one. And if you want to keep these reminders close, hit like, subscribe so you don't lose this, and I'll see you in the next video.